And, the Native Americans always felt that the job of a good storyteller when he came into the village was to put all of the children to sleep. And so if you tend to nod off a little bit, it could be we're doing our job tonight, so don't feel bad. But before we again tell of the War of 1812, there is yet another Indian war to relate, one that's almost totally forgotten. This wind of war came from the west, from Indians centering in the Ohio Territory. This trouble only ends when General Anthony Wayne defeated them in 1794. A serious trouble began in 1789, and by 91, the war blows into Pennsylvania. April of that year, Flying Cloud, a Seneca chief, lets the settlers around French Creek know that the western Indians, the Wyandot, the Shoshone, and the Delaware, were planning an invasion. People worked together to protect themselves, yet it was April, and their crops still had to be planted. Now, one story is told by the Meade family. Darius Meade Sr. had gotten the same warning from Flying Cloud. The Meades, however, had always been friendly with the Indians, especially corn planters. Darius, now age 63, having no fear, continues his plowing alone in his fields on his farm near Fort Franklin. Night is falling, and he must unhitch his horses and return to his cabin. Now, so the Meade story unfolds. Have a care, Darius. The Indians have suffered 150 years the perfidy of the white man, and you can expect no mercy if you are captured. My warning is too late. Out of the shadows, around the clearing come two silent figures. One Indian, gray with years, the other young. They seize Darius Meade from behind, bind his arms, and lead him away into the western forest. For hours they travel, and in due course reach Chinago Creek in Mercer County. There they tie our great sire to a tree and lie down to sleep. As Darius leans his aching body against the tree, he thinks with heavy heart of his long struggle for a home. He hears the pounding of the surf on the old Horseneck farm. He remembers his mother and the journey to 9 Partners, then his marriage and the removal to Hudson. He recalls the Valley of Mingling Waters and the fight against the Indians. Then the tiresome migration to Wyoming and the failure of his land title. He remembers the Delawares, led by Captain Bull, and the terrible mutilation of his son Ashel. He thinks of his wife and his other sons and their family down at Fort Franklin. The dying embers of the campfire flare up just as one of the captors turns in his sleep. Features of the older savage become distinct in the firelight. Memories of the past awaken in Darius Meade, memories of the terrible massacre of 1778 back in Wyoming Valley. The face of the savage is the face of Captain Bull. The man of peace gazes in startled agony at those terrible features. Descendant of 4 generations of whites who never wronged any man, much less an unschooled savage, is a captive in the power of the man who had killed and butchered his beloved son. Be calm, Darius. Your situation is desperate. You are bound hand and foot, your arms cramped around behind a tree. Is it possible that you can escape? Your only hope is to break your thongs by patiently sawing them against the tree. His arms are free. He steadies himself for battle. Hand relaxes his stiffened limbs. He poises for the struggle. God, strengthen his arms. Stone. The younger man is stunned. Now Darius has the younger man's tomahawk. But as he rises, the older man, Captain Bull, jumps to his feet. The red man is startled from his sleep. The white man cramped from his thongs. They are both well past middle age, both in buckskin and moccasins. The one has a single scalp lock, the other matted locks of graying hair spreading over his shoulders. For a moment they face each other, and then they lunge to the combat. Captain Bull, beware the wrath of a peaceful man. Darius Meade, beware the desperation of a man blindly seeking to avenge his race. It is a battle to the death. When daylight comes again, Darius Meade has avenged the death of the sun, and Captain Bull has given his life for his people. First to learn of the disaster is Chanawango, another friendly Seneca chief, who sent his daughter to tell the family of the finding of the bodies. David and John Meade and several of the grandchildren go to the scene of the death. They buried great sire Davis where he fell, under the forest trees, and buried the body of Captain Bull beside him. The other Indian is not heard of for some time. When it is learned, wounded by the brave old patriarch, he had crawled away and had later died of his wounds. Now, it was these deaths and the frequent alarm of Indians about this time which caused the settlement at French Creek at Meadville to be abandoned. By 1792, there are no settlers in Crawford County. In the spring of '93, some of the first settlers returned to their farms, and during the summer, Flying Cloud again let the settlers know that the Western Indians were preparing another attack. The county was again deserted until later fall and winter. In the early part of 1794, the settlers organized themselves into a military company. This same militia will operate into the War of 1812. Now, the Treaty of General Wayne in 1795 with the Western Indians brought peace to the settlements of northwestern Pennsylvania. And during the year of '95, the towns of Erie, Warren, and Franklin were surveyed and laid out by Andrew Ellicott under agency of General William Irvine, a very good friend of General Joseph Warren. Now, this peace allowed people to settle in this area. Sons and daughters of Revolutionary War soldiers and of the Indian Wars had time to grow into families, meet to make churches and schools and to make a living, and retell their old stories of family courage and hardship. And so it was when the War of 1812 began. Meade's, Davis's, Andrew families, and many others who had fought in the Revolutionary War and in the Indian Wars had settled in northwestern Pennsylvania. Now, in 1812, the people of Warren hear that the war started only after July 12th from news that came from a town meeting that was held in Meadville. The Warren people hear that Fort Mackinac, Fort Detroit, and Fort Dearborn quickly fell. Now, news of a massacre by Indians of prisoners outside of Fort Dearborn spread. The people of Warren and Meadville would have been very concerned about the natives that could be real trouble. Almost all the military-aged men joined the militia. The people of Warren County were in the 2nd Battalion under Major John Andrews, in the 16th Division under General David Meade, brother of Ruth Meade Davis, who was married to John Andrews. Warren County men were in 16 companies. There were 131 men from Warren County listed. That was close to all the men of military age. There were only 827 people living in Warren County and 183 men of military age in the census of 1810. But there was probably less by the time the war started. Some men were lumbermen. Some had rafting experience, and some Warren County men supplied their own guns. Emmanuel Cole was recorded to have done so. Abraham Davis may have had his own sidearm. He had taken a raft of lumber all the way down to New Orleans. He had gotten on a ship in New Orleans to Philadelphia, and he bought a sidearm in Philadelphia for a horse ride from Philadelphia all the way back to Warren County. And Nehemiah York was recorded buying his own rifle after the war for 20,000 shingles that he had made. But let it be said that Warren County, because of all the many stories of the Revolutionary War and the Indian Wars, provided its full quota for the militia. Now, when the war started, there was still worry that Corn Planters Indians would go with the British. So a 3-person commission went to Geneseo to confer with Corn Planter. It was headed by General David Meade. There's a good chance that they came through Warren County because he would have wanted to confer with his brother-in-law, Major John Andrews, and his brothers Darius and Joseph. The visit with Corn Planter went well. His brother Henry O'Bale and Halftown are listed as serving in the war. But there was always a worry about the Indians. The story is told that while all the men were gone, either to Meadville or to Erie, Ruth Davis, living along the Broken Straw, not far from here, came out on her porch and she looked down the valley and she saw a group of Indians coming up, all dressed for war. She grabbed her precious daughters Elsie and Susan and ran into the buckwheat field and hid. The Indians are said to have gone to the cabin, knocked on the door. No one coming to the door, they just simply went to the well, drew water, and were on their way. It was found out later those were Corn Planters Indians heading toward Meadville to join the fight against the British. Now Erie became the focus of Warren County men when the fleet was being built. Records are sparse. The Pennsylvania archives only give the first and the last months of pay and place of duty. Several events are known. There were 500 volunteers out of the division which marched and dragged cannons to help General Winchester at the Raisin River in Ohio. Captain Bonnard's company of Warren was with those 500 volunteers. Now Winchester had started well by defeating the Indians on January 18, 1813, and then the Indians counterattacked near Malden on the 22nd. Winchester came back with 27 men. The Warren County expedition and the 500 volunteers could not get there in time. In another expedition, Warren men started out, but they had to come back because the ice was too thin and they couldn't cross the rivers. There was another one that left under Colonel Fierce it had 511 men, and they returned with 352. But it was mostly sickness that killed most of those men. Now, there was also an emergency march to Buffalo. Buffalo was going to be under attack, and the Warren group left to try to protect Buffalo, but by the time they got there, Buffalo had been burned to the ground. But the Warren contingent stayed for 2 months. The whole battalion had gone. Now, I do know the soldiers went on and off duty during this time. My great-great-grandfather, Isaac Davis, was listed as a private in Erie at the beginning of the war, but I do know he came back to the Broken Straw in 1813. He signed a signature on a deed when Joseph Meade bought Meade Island from Cornplanter. That was an interesting find that I accidentally found upon it. Great museum in there. Anyways, I digress. The Warren County men braved the cold and many long marches. And it was the women, for the most part, who had to take care of the family and the farm. Now this brings us to the building of the fleet. Francis Ramsey, a worker at the Historical Society back in the 60s, reported that Warren men served in the Militia Guard, in supply centers, that played a part in getting the ships of the fleet ready for action across the bar. Captain Price's men were in Erie when Daniel Dobbins arrived. Supplies, except for wood, came from elsewhere. Now it's listed that Hugh Marsh and James Morrison of Warren County were paid for hauling something, but it wasn't listed as to what they hauled. I'm wondering, could it have been the White Pines in Pine Valley near Columbus were used as the masts? Daniel Horn, adjutant for the 2nd Battalion, who lived next to Abraham Davis in Columbus, had taken wood to Pittsburgh and New Orleans with Abraham. He would have known where the Great White Pines were in Pine Valley, and there was a road that led from Waterford to Erie. Could it have been those White Pines that our Warren County people took to build the fleet? Our people were not there when Perry arrived. Most of them had left for the winter. When they ran short of supplies and they had to go out scavenging for food and trying to get food, Warren people were probably involved in gathering food. The irons did not arrive in time, and so they sent out for the blacksmith shops, the local blacksmith shops, to gather in some iron scraps. And could that have been what our people hauled? So lots of the iron was obtained from local shops. Our men were there when the cannon arrived from Washington. Warren men were there when the sailcloth arrived from Philadelphia. They saw the camels being built and may have helped, as the camels were used to lift the brigs over the bar. Now they were there when they were told, "We have met the enemy and they are ours." Now, it's time to hear from another voice, a female voice. Again this time, happenings that took place around Fort LaBeouf. And this mystery, little ones, pay attention. You might think in terms of trying to solve this one. It is told by Corinne Davidson.